Welcome into the best damn college football show out there, presented by WagerTalk on YouTube, the WagerTalk YouTube channel. We got Rob Veno, Ralph Michaels. I am Drew Martin. Breaking down the card here, guys. We got 3 games we're going to break down in depth. We got a degenerate special and best bets at the end. We got Ralph Michaels on Twitter at CalSportsLV. Welcome in, buddy. How you feeling?
Hey, doing great. We're in the midst of 20 straight games of football going through the Monday before Thanksgiving. So, it's an exciting time. A lot of people pick on these MAC games. I love it. It's football Tuesday, Wednesday. And even without a play tonight, I put up a 2-star for my all access customers on Tuesday. I still enjoy watching those MAC games and learning and moving forward and pulling value out of them this week to look towards more value next week.
Yeah, absolutely, Ralph. 20 straight days of football. It's going to be fun starting with the MAC tonight. We got Rob Veno at Rob Veno Sports on Twitter. Robbie, welcome in.
Good afternoon, guys. Our favorite part of Tuesday. Although, as Ralph just said, the MAC show that we'll do following this is becoming a pretty much a favorite. We're all together again this week, I think. So a good day to talk college football. Pretty solid weekend for myself, so happy to be here.
Yeah, happy to have you, Robbie. And Ralph, let's start off with anything you've learned to this point in the season, last week especially, that you think bettors should know about going into this week that maybe might give them an edge.
Well, we're still looking at some big dogs winning. I mean, we're not to the established pace where, we know the good teams, we know the bad teams. We look last week, Maryland beating Penn State as a 24.5-point dog. Liberty knocking off Tech. On Twitter, it seemed anyone in the world that bet Liberty on the money line tweeted about it and told you. I mean, after that game, it looked like there was 1,000 people that bet Liberty on the money line. So hats off to them all. I didn't. And then, a couple surprises. We're only a couple weeks into the Mountain West, but damn. I played against San Jose State last Friday, and they kicked my ass, and they are a legitimate program. I mean, hats off to Brennan there. I mean, what he's done with San Jose State has impressed me as any team out there, even Coastal Carolina, even Liberty. Watching their defense play against San Diego State really just opened up my eyes.
Yeah, you could really tell. I mean, just in the caliber of athlete up and down the roster, they got some big boys out there making havoc on that defensive line, especially. But Robbie, did you want to throw out anything you've learned, so far this season, especially last week, that bettors can take coming up into this week?
Sure. I mean, you can't read my chicken scratch notes here, but the first thing on this list that's unreadable was San Jose State is really good. I thought they were, in fact, I pretty much knew they were good offensively. But the defense was the surprising part of that game, whether or not it has anything to do with San Diego State still being the same tortoise type of offense that they've always been. It remains to be seen. But certainly there's an energy on that defense that, wasn't present before Brennan got there. You go back to last year's Arkansas game where they picked Starkel off 5 times. That was kind of the beginning of this. And this season, it's been really good defensively. Nick Starkel gets hurt in that game. Doesn't matter. Nick Nash comes in, plays really well. I think we learned that Jaden Daniels, and we'll talk about Arizona State later, the QB for Arizona State. Yes, he is good enough to carry a bunch of freshman skill position players. They almost pulled that game out. USC got him late. This, so-called vaunted Texas offense with Sam Ehlinger at quarterback, just no good against good defenses, right? The last 2 weeks, Oklahoma State and West Virginia, that team cannot move the football against a good defense. So I think we can separate Texas games out right now. One thing I mentioned yesterday, Drew, on a show in Miami where you're also a guest during the week in the Greek Zone. We'll give them a little plug there. I talked about, I gave the listeners just a little look ahead to a team that I think is very bettable throughout the remainder of the schedule, and that's Nebraska. They screwed me on Saturday because they just failed time upon time inside the red zone. But Scott Frost's team is way better this year. Some decision-making on the part of Taylor Martinez and McCaffrey at quarterback kind of set them back. But boy, oh boy, they outplayed Northwestern every which way and still found a way to only score 13 points on 442 total yards. Last thing I'll say, I'll repeat it again, Drew, our favorite conference, Sun Belt. Arkansas State's offense is gone. And they did nothing against ULL on Saturday. 3 straight games. I took my head, I smashed it into a brick wall one more time and tried to play them over. Funny, this week they shut ULL out in the first half. Where did the defense come from? So complete reversal for Arkansas State here. I'm done. Officially on this show, Tuesday, November 10th, 2:14 East, I'm done with Arkansas State.
Oh, Drew, you know what that means? If Rob's off and we got to jump on him because this is the week. Because you know that happens, right? You know it's an absolute. They got ULM this week. It's going to be 62-3, and Rob's going, oh, my God, 1 week too early. So that is the creed for gamblers. If you know a gambler that's been on that, bashes his head against the wall, and now jumps off of it, it's time to jump on it. I do have one situation I pulled up, and I just want to bring it up to you guys. It's not about a game we're talking about. It's nothing specific. But I just want you to have the thought in your head as you move forward. UAB has led into the fourth quarter each of the last 2 games and lost. They led ULL 20-17 into the fourth quarter. They lost 24-10. UAB led La Tech 31-17 into the fourth quarter and lost in double overtime. So back-to-back games, you had the lead and you lost. What do you think you do the next week? Positive or negative? Putting you guys on the spot.
I would think positive, but I don't know.
Yeah, the other side of that coin is you bet the opponent on the second half number, I guess, right now.
Well, I'm just so since 2014, when a team has blown back-to-back leads, so you finish the game depressed, they have only gone 25% against the spread. So, and a lot of times I like looking at the straight up number as well. Those teams like UAB that have blown fourth quarter leads back-to-back games, they've been a favorite of 1.6 points per game, but they're only 13-16 straight up. So when you have a favorite in a negative straight up roll and a bad ATS number, I think that makes it even a stronger play. So again, I'm not going to fade UAB as a best bet. Just a situation I thought was one unique situation, a specific situation of putting people's heads. What happens if that occurs?
Good stuff, Ralph. And you guys bring up ULM being on Arkansas State's radar. That was funny, Ralph. Right when Robbie said it, I'm like, what does that mean? Bet them, this upcoming week. But talking about things that we've learned. How about ULM slipping in the back door against Georgia State, laying 18.5? That was a tough one. So ULM maybe isn't dead in the betting markets themselves. I wanted to throw out one with South Carolina. I was on them personally. And watch out if you're betting the Gamecocks. There might be something wrong there in Columbia, South Carolina, Robbie. I know you had your eye on it.
Yeah, I was on Twitter in that game. I think my actual post was if South Carolina didn't have wide receiver Shi Smith, they'd be Vanderbilt. And Vanderbilt played far better offense on Saturday than did South Carolina. So, yeah, Will Muschamp, guys. Great defensive coordinator, not a fan as a head coach. Mike Bobo not in there solving any problems. Their entire offensive season statistically is built on one game. That's Vanderbilt. Everybody else they've been pretty poor against offensively. I agree with you, Drew. We'll see. I mean, the talk around the nation is Jim Harbaugh's got to go at Michigan, but Will Muschamp at South Carolina. I mean, good thing he's married to the AD because otherwise I think he'd be long gone.
He really is? I didn't know that.
Well, that term used as they're joined together. You know what I mean? But yeah, and I do want all the listeners or all the viewers today to take Ralph's advice. And we've already given you one free winner, Arkansas State, or over. Maybe we've given you 2.
Yeah. And, just to bring up your South Carolina point, guys, you look at South Carolina and on the surface you say, well, hell, they beat Auburn 30-22. Well, they really didn't. They were plus 2 turnovers. They were minus 184 yards. So even that was a fortunate win. Although if you look at it, it looks like a good win. Diving into the box scores a little bit more, it was a fortunate win.
Well, good stuff, guys. At the start, we got the 3 games here, Degenerate Special and Best Bet to come. Welcome in Muhammad, James, Abby, Paco Healy, the New Orleans this weekend in Vegas. Saw him, Corey Williams, Johnny Outlaw, all of you guys. Special thanks to Big DR with the shout out here in the chat box. Guys, we got the Thursday nighter, November 12th. We're breaking this one down, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific kick here. Colorado State at Boise State. Looks like we got 60.5 being the total here, boys. Robbie, we got Boise State laying 14 on the blue turf here. Quarterback questions, and it doesn't sound like the coach is going to let out many angles at all. This one going to be on Fox Sports 1, so a watch and win Friday night lights action. Going to be a lot of tickets written here, Robbie. Colorado State versus Boise State. What are you thinking Friday night?
Yeah, I saw an interview with Brian Harsin done yesterday, the head coach of Boise State, and he's far more interested in talking about the team rebounding this week than he is about who his quarterback is going to be. And your guess is as good as mine at this point. I mean, the 3 of us discussed it off air, who it might be, who it might not be. The one thing I can't get clear is what the exact protocol is for a coronavirus absence, if in fact that is what Hank Bachmeier had 2 weeks ago. Now, at that point in time when they played Air Force, I had read that it was COVID related. So that's my assumption here, that Bachmeier, maybe he can come back, maybe he can't. I don't know. Like the Pac or the Big Ten, guys, has a 21-day total that you can't play. So, like the quarterback situation at Illinois, they're with a backup for 3 consecutive weeks until they can get Brandon Peters back. So we'll see if Bachmeier comes back here. I would not expect Jack Sears. He took a vicious hit to the head that went unnoticed by the referees in that game. Chase Cord, their normal number 2, is still healing from injuries and surgeries from last year. So that's why Chase Cord wasn't in there. You got your number 4 quarterback, freshman Cade Fennegan, who actually threw a couple of nice TD passes in the fourth quarter. So I wouldn't be surprised if Fennegan goes. Sure, the offense takes a little dip down, but I think those were confidence builders in the fourth quarter. In that fourth quarter, I think there were like 4 touchdowns in some short amount of time to send that game up and over the total. But Fennegan may go here. I would start there and then work my way up. If Bachmeier plays, my power ratings call for Boise State to be 18.5 better, not 14, so maybe you get a little value. On the other side of this coin, guys, Colorado State head coach Steve Adazio, first year, got too cute in week 1, started his Temple transfer, Todd Centeio at quarterback because he was a running quarterback. He did the right thing this past week. He started Patrick O'Brien, the better thrower, and it showed against Wyoming. There was money towards CSU. CSU gets the win. O'Brien goes 18 of 26, 255, a couple of TDs. A couple of things I didn't like about the Colorado State defense. Offensively, with O'Brien, they're good. But defensively, I didn't like this fact. They game planned to stop Wyoming's running game, which every Mountain West team does, because they want to run the football first. They were fairly successful stopping the run, but they got off to a huge lead, 17-0. Then 24-7, and Wyoming, not known as a passing team, with number 2 quarterback Levi Williams, who's now their starter because of injury in week 1. Here's what happens. They're down 17-0. It's not a throwing football team, but on their very next drive, they throw for 45 yards, score a touchdown. Colorado State goes up 24-7. Wyoming throws the football on their very next drive, 73 passing yards and a touchdown. Point here being is they completed a lot of chunk plays through the air against this Colorado State defense. Regardless of who the Boise quarterback is in this case, I think the receivers on that team are good enough to be open all night long from what I saw from Colorado State. Overall, Levi Williams goes 19 of 32 for 321, 17 yards per completion. Pretty good stuff. I wouldn't trust CSU's defense against Boise. If I had to look, guys, and I haven't played yet, but if I had to look, I think that total of 61 is probably low. Boise's got defensive injuries on top of the quarterback problems. They're really not the same defense at this current point in time. So to me, I think the weather conditions are going to be pretty good. I think I would look over 61 right now.
Yeah, Albertson Stadium showing 67 degrees with wind under 5 miles per hour. So should be pretty conducive to scoring points here, Ralph. Do you like the over as well? What are your thoughts here, Boise State versus Colorado State, man?
I do like the over, and the funny thing is, Rob, I read the same articles and it said, it was my switch to the passing quarterback. The funny thing is, against Fresno, they had 372 yards and 21 first downs. They had 30 less yards against Wyoming, 3 fewer first downs, and they were getting raved on offense. So, the stat sheet doesn't show that same disparity between those two quarterbacks, where in fact they had a higher performance against Fresno State on the road versus at home. Now, it's also easier to say, well, you trailed Fresno by 14 at the half, and against Wyoming, you had a 10-point lead at the half. So you're playing much differently in the second half. I understand that part of the concept, obviously. But, I agree with you, Colorado State's defense. You played on the road at Fresno and you played Wyoming. Two offenses that are going to rate nowhere near the top of the Mountain West. Yet you're allowing 65% completions. You're allowing 335 yards passing per game. And you're allowing 450 yards per game against those two foes. If Brockmeyer practices, and that's the key, guys, excuse me, when you're with this, both with what Robbie said and what I said, go into the Boise paper on Friday or follow the Boise Follows on Twitter. And if Brockmeyer practices and takes the 1 snaps, I think there's value with Boise and the over. If Brockmeyer does not take snaps, and the true freshman Finnegan takes snaps, I'm just not playing anything on the game. So clearly I want Boise off that embarrassing home loss on the turf, but I need Brockmeyer to make the bet. So I'm not suggesting we do anything at this point. I'm suggesting we pay attention to Thursday's news. If he's a go, jump on it as quick as it can, because if he says, okay, Brockmeyer's 100%, he's starting, I can tell you this line's going to go to 17.
Right. Right.
And Ralph, what about, if Finnegan does get the start, a true freshman like you're talking about, it's always a little shaky, but you'd like to think if he's starting, he's the one taking the first team reps all week long, getting ready for this game. How much improvement do you think we'll actually see from him?
Well, obviously, you're playing Colorado State's defense instead of BYU's defense, and you took snaps with the number ones, instead of, 2 weeks ago, he got no snaps because you had Brockmeyer taking the 1, Sears taking the 2. Last week, he may have gotten a few snaps. This week, he's probably gotten a lot of snaps, but I'm still not, it's much different coming in on a game and coming in on the first series and playing where you're not prepared. But there's a lot of butterflies involved with if he knows he's starting this week. It's tough to say, okay, I'm now the starter. I'm having it. I want no part of a first start with a freshman laying, not maybe winning the game, but laying over 2 touchdowns.
Okay, makes a lot of sense there. And Robbie, next game up, we got Big Ten action here. 163, 164, the rotation numbers. Looks like 12 noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific kick. So starting Saturday off here, Robbie, we got the number 10 ranked Indiana Hoosiers. And we're not talking basketball. We're talking football here. -7 in the hook, mostly, actually. There is that hook on the 7. That is the Indiana Hoosiers laying on the road in East Lansing at Michigan State. 52 being the total here, Robbie. What are you thinking?
Yeah, power ratings show Indiana -8. The money's come in on Michigan State. I think I saw the opener at 9. Pushed down now to 7.5 or 7 in some spots, like you just mentioned, Drew. So perhaps that money comes in based on a potential letdown for Indiana. Who knows? Tom Allen is such a great motivator. I hate to play against him simply on letdown theory because that guy, well, we saw the mark on his side of his face, right? He went to go jump and high five with one of his players and catches a helmet to the face and gets all cut up and didn't really care about it. He's that kind of player's coach. So I think they should be okay there unless the players lay down. And I'm not sure that I'm not lay down, let down. I'm not sure that that'll happen. Michael Penix, guys, finally had the complete game that he hadn't had in the first two. This kid's a tremendous talent, and he's better than what he showed in the first two. Here against Michigan, he has a really good day. I think it's interesting to note that Indiana threw the ball so well against Michigan, and the prior week in upsetting Michigan, Michigan State did it the same way. This Michigan secondary is not good. Let's not knock Michigan entirely because they played the entire game without one of their stud defensive ends, Aiden Hutchinson, and without their other even bigger star defensive end, Kwity Paye, for about a quarter and a half to finish the game. He left the game in the third quarter. So they really had no pass rush. It's the second week in a row they had no pass rush, and the secondary is not good. So maybe Indiana's passing numbers are a little bit padded by the fact that Michigan's pass defense is far worse than we could have ever expected based on the results of the last 2 weeks, Michigan State and Indiana. But I still will give credit to Indiana offensively. It's a balanced offense. Here against Michigan State, we'll see, guys. These Indiana defensive numbers look really good last week on paper, right? The true rushing yards against Michigan last week, it's 15 carries for 33 yards put up by the Wolverines. That's basically over 2 yards a carry, barely over 2 yards a carry. And Indiana got 3 sacks. But again, I have to caution, just like I did with the defense, because Michigan played without both starting offensive tackles. So you're without both starting offensive tackles, basically 2 stud defensive ends. Michigan was a banged-up football team in this game. It helped Indiana a little bit. It didn't get them the victory, but it did help them a little bit. The Michigan State side, maybe they can throw it here, guys. Now, Rocky Lombardi had a rough outing. Iowa came to play. They shut Michigan State down. It was a performance, much like week 1 against Rutgers, where they turned it over again. I think that's 10 turnovers in those 2 games, 9 or 10 turnovers in those 2 games. So Michigan State, a little bit shaky where that's concerned. If you trust the Indiana taking a breather theory, then maybe you're with the line movement here, 7.5. But I have more faith, guys, in the matchups of these passing offenses, Lombardi on one side with his fleet receiving crew, and Penix on the other side with Phil Yoren, Freifogel, and Hendershot, and those guys. I think they can take advantage of these pass defenses. 51 or 51.5 is what I saw for a total before we came on air. Boy, I don't know. To me, that's far too low. I don't think either of these pass defenses is good enough to stop the other teams. So I may find my way to over in this game.
And yeah, looking at the weather here, and we got some questions here in the chat box about, how do you find the weather? I mean, one way here is just to type in, Michigan State University weather, and it will pop up. Google has made great strides in the last couple of years, guys, but it does look like 40 degrees with 10 to 15 mile an hour winds. So not great weather, but not, disastrous weather for overs here. Ralph, let's get your thoughts, man. We got the Hoosiers and Spartans kicking off on ABC, 12 noon Eastern time, kicking off the slate here. What are you thinking, buddy?
Well, I am a Tom Allen fan. I think if you look at the progression of what Indiana's done, it's a positive. Hell, I mean, Indiana's 8-2 their last 10 Big Ten games. That's as good as anyone but Ohio State. So, have they turned the corner? I think so. Rob brought up a very valid point of if they can overcome the idea of beating Michigan the first time. Well, I'm going to say this. They beat Penn State in the opener. What did they do? I was on Indiana against Rutgers. I thought that line was too low. And they go in the Rutgers and they win 37-21. So I think there shows you there is not going to be a letdown. I will say this. It's probably the biggest sandwich spot in college football, being off Michigan, an upset, and a team that you beat for the first time in how many years, playing Michigan State, a team that's probably last in the Big Ten East at least, with only 10 returning starters and a new coach, and being 3-0 and think for the first time in their players' heads, we can go to Ohio State next week and win, and all of a sudden we are going to be Big Ten champions. Look at the schedule, the way it plays out. So, will he have his players focused on Michigan State? I do believe Tom Allen will. So even though they have Ohio State on deck, even though they're off the upset of Michigan, I like Indiana in this. My power rating is 12. I look at Michigan State's production. They only had a sack against Michigan, a sack against Iowa. If you're going to get Penix time to sit back there and throw, he's going to eat you apart. When you look at the Michigan State defense, you've allowed 226 yards rushing to Iowa. You even allowed over 100 yards rushing to Rutgers. So that's the perspective I look at. The Iowa defense, to me, is playing fine. Yes, they allowed 250 yards against Penn State in that opener. But again, you were playing with the lead, and Penn State was the one trying to make that comeback and get to OT, and they did. So, when you're playing prevent defense, in the second half, and they take chunks of 8 or 10 yards rushing, that's fine. Those are the same as those 8 or 10 yard pass plays where we're playing umbrella defense. So I don't take that defense. I don't take that yardage into account as much. Will I get on Penn? Will I get on Indiana? Maybe. But it's clearly the way I'm going is on the Hoosiers.
Guys, this is the best damn college football show out there. WagerTalk YouTube channel. That's where we're simulcast at each and every Tuesday, 11 a.m. Pacific time. A lot of people in the chat asking about Maction tonight and tomorrow. We will have the Maction show following this show right at 12 noon Pacific time. So come back and join us. Mid-Major Matt will join Robbie and I. Also, people asking in the chat box, saw FAU chat there. The Shula Bowl was one of the last cuts here for today's show. So we aren't going to hit that one, but we do have SMU Tulsa coming up next. One that I'm really interested in here. But I do want to give a shout out to Robbie Veno, hot right now. College football current run 15-7. That's 68%, 26% ROI. And in the NFL, current run of 34-15. That's 69%, 63%. ROI, which is return on investment. Check them out, wagertalk.com. Robbie's seeing it well. He's got a play up right now. We have the November thank you special as well, discounted if you're looking for the rest of his plays for November. So all of that available at wagertalk.com. And also remember, it is $2 Tuesday at WagerTalk and sportsmemo.com. So if you're looking to try it out today, as good as any. Guys, next game up here, Ralph, we got SMU in Tulsa. Key AAC battle here as 3-1 Tulsa up against 7-1 SMU. Discrepancy in how many games played here is pretty monstrous. Also a discrepancy in how these two teams are going to go about playing football. Tulsa a little bit more defensive minded. SMU, as we know, up and down the field here, Ralph. So going to be a kind of contrast of styles. In Tulsa, this was an interesting one to kind of put out a number. Tulsa -2.5 here, Ralph. We talked it a little bit before we started here. This is one where I really like the Tulsa Hurricanes. I think you're on the other side, but SMU, at least from my perspective, how I'm looking to bet this is an offense under Sonny Dykes where I'm not really afraid to lay points with SMU. He's the type of coach offense that's going to go pedal to the metal, look to rev it up a little bit. He's got the experienced quarterback play, throwing the ball downfield with a lead. But we saw it in the Cincinnati game. And now, granted, I don't think Tulsa's defense is as good as Cincinnati's, but when they go up against like talent or even talent that can kind of dominate them up front on the defensive line, it's not the type of profile offense I like in that situation. So that's why I don't like SMU here. I like Tulsa. This is a team that hung with Oklahoma State, beat UCF. Their schedule strength is up there, not only in the AAC, but really in the country. So I like the Tulsa Hurricanes here, but I'll throw it over to you, man. What do you think in SMU versus Tulsa?
Well, you said I'm going to like SMU, and that's not quite true, Drew, because my power ratings say SMU -3. So, Rob, I think you'll attest to this. If you have a 6-point difference and you're not wild about that team, then that's when you got to start looking into it. My power ratings are based on me looking at the box scores, changing my number on Monday, and I don't want to get my heart or who I've won on or who I lost on. So the power ratings are a great check to see how you feel about a team. The Tulsa team has just impressed me. I will say this. I was on them the first half against East Carolina and lost. East Carolina looked good. Tulsa looked like they were in a letdown spot off those back-to-back wins, but it was also their first game at home. And they've had a very skeleton schedule. You played a game, you sat a game. You played a game, you sat a game. Where SMU is now, 8 games in? Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
you're playing your 9th game against your 5th. So, Shane Buechele, I mean, anytime you are coming off a season where you had a 34-10 ratio, and now you have a 20-3 ratio, and you're completing 67% of your passes, and your only loss on the season is going to Cincinnati, who looks like they're the best group of 5 team out there, and you only get outgained by 149 yards, and you have a 5 first down edge against Cincinnati. You go into Cincinnati and you have a 22-17 first down edge. I mean, 90% of the teams in the country would take that and say, yeah, that's a positive. So, it's a game where I am not going to play the game, just simply for the reason my power rating says SMU -3, which means I like SMU, but I'm afraid to play against that Tulsa defense. But I really do like that SMU offense. So I'm going to be very wishy-washy in this one. I will say this, looking at what Tulsa has done, UCF, they trailed 23-12 at halftime. They came back. East Carolina, they trailed 17-3 at halftime and came back. At USF, they did score early. So when you have a team that struggles to play early and you have a team like SMU that can get out of the gate early, if I played anything in this game, it would be SMU first quarter or SMU first half, because then I think the situation matches with where my power rating numbers say the game should be.
And Ralph, my mistake on saying that you would like SMU, I was just going off of your power rating, so that's my bad. But yeah, I mean, Robbie, like kind of Ralph was saying here, it can be a tough one. You can make cases for both. I mean, the first half SMU case, yeah, Tulsa has struggled out the gate, but this is a defense that held Oklahoma State to 16 points, UCF to 26 points. Now, I know that there was kind of weather there towards the end, and that helps against UCF, but still, I mean, this defense is nothing to kind of shake your head out here. I'm interested in your opinion. We also got some questions in the chat box about your thoughts on this total, Robbie.
Well, let me say this for starters, Drew. I'll start with your theory on the Tulsa defensive side. If you split their 4-game schedule into 2 and 2, 2 teams that could not throw the ball a lick. Remember, they played Oklahoma State first game of the year. Spencer Sanders gets hurt. They call in a freshman quarterback to play that game, and they did everything they could just to escape Tulsa with a victory in that game. So not a good passing team in that respect. Then the other game against South Florida, another team that's been through 4 or 5 quarterbacks this year, cannot throw the football. The 2 teams that they played that can throw the football, and ECU not even to the extent that SMU can throw the football. Here's what I have for you. Central Florida and East Carolina versus Tulsa dropped back to pass 101 times combined. Tulsa got 1 sack. 100 times the pocket. I'm not going to say it was clean, but 100 out of 101 times they got the ball away. That SMU offensive line does a great job of protecting Shane Buechele. I don't see him being under a lot of pressure since, 101 pass attempts by UCF and ECU resulted in 1 sack. Can the receivers run away from Tulsa defensive backs if Buechele's given time? Of course they can, even without Reggie Robertson. The last 3 weeks, we've seen Gray and company come up big. So I could see SMU moving the football here. The other side of this coin is SMU's defense is not great, guys. And Tulsa, even though they've only played 4 games, the last 3 have shown pretty good offensive production. Yes, they got shut down by Oklahoma State week 1, but how about 438 yards against UCF, 462 yards against USF, 428 yards against ECU. We know South Florida and ECU aren't great defenses, but again, neither is SMU. Last week against Temple, with the 2 backup quarterbacks, sophomore quarterbacks again, Real Mitchell finished that game for Temple, but Temple moved the ball really well against SMU. SMU sleptwalked through the first half. they came alive in the second half, I think, with 4 TDs outside the red zone, just big play after big play. And they win going away because their offense can do that. But I think Tulsa can move the ball. I'm positive SMU can move the football. I wonder how Tulsa will play this. Defensively, will they play, as Ralph mentioned earlier, umbrella-type defense and force SMU underneath? I don't think that makes a difference, guys, because SMU off of slant patterns can go the distance. So it really doesn't matter if you try and avoid deep pass plays with them. Somebody wanted to know what I think about the total. Here's what I think about the total. I think this game could have a minimum of 34-31 written all over it. Close game either way. 34-31 is 65. 65 is more than 64. I'm good at math. I would probably say over. To Ralph's point about power ratings, I show the same thing. SMU 3 points better on the road here against Tulsa. Zach Smith and company will move it. Shane Buechele and company will move it. I probably like over, guys, if it stays here. I don't think it'll stay here. Might get a little bit higher, but Tulsa's had 2 weeks to get ready for this. Let's not forget that either. It's a long time. And maybe SMU skipped by Temple and started getting ready early as well. It's a game. Real quick, guys, one thing I missed here is how important the game is. Mm-hmm. I mean, somebody's got to be the other team to go to the AAC title game. And right now, Tulsa's 3-0 in conference. SMU's 4-1 in conference. If SMU loses, they're done. Tulsa, if they lose, they would lose the tiebreaker to SMU. It's a very, very important game.
Yeah, one more note. Rob made a great point about Tulsa and the sacks they got against those. When you look at SMU and you say, well, they've been sacked 17 times on the season. That's a good number. It's not a great number. But if you take away 5 sacks against Cincinnati on the road, that means you've only been sacked 12 times in the other 7 games, taking away an almost elite defense when you're playing on the road. So, that's just another point that strengthens Rob's. Do keep an eye on Zaven Collins, the linebacker from Tulsa. He's like all-American caliber. He's a little small, may make it a shot at the NFL, but he's something special, and he's why Tulsa can stuff the run game, but he's not fantastic at covering the pass or having, he plays middle, so he doesn't take the running back anyway, but he is a talent to watch on defense.
Yeah, that was a great breakdown, Robbie. I mean, you bring up some fascinating points here. But SMU only had 290 yards against Cincinnati. So I would say they got dominated. That was their lowest production of the season. But you're right. Tulsa did give up, 455 yards to UCF, which actually is good when you compare.
That's really good.
It is
really good.
It is the best. So that is, I go on number ones. So that's a great point, Drew. 455 yards against UCF was UCF's season low. 456 yards against East Carolina was actually East Carolina's 5th best performance. So there's a big difference there, holding someone, and I like looking. We talk about this in the NFL as well. It's not how many yards you give up. It's how many yards above or below a team's average you give up. And again, Tulsa did hold UCF to a season low number 1, but the East Carolina was a very bad performance at number 5.
Interesting. So go ahead, Robbie.
Let's just say this real quick. As long as we're sticking with number ones, let's not hold SMU to the 290 that they gained against Cincinnati as a bad number. Cincinnati in the last 3 weeks has now mowed through Memphis, Houston, and SMU. Largely considered the 3 best offenses, not called Central Florida in that conference. Cincinnati held all 3 of those teams to their season low in total offense. So no knock against SMU to only get 290 against that team. Memphis couldn't get anywhere. Houston couldn't get anywhere. Cincinnati's just that good right now. It'd be interesting if we ever get to see a Cincinnati Central Florida matchup to see what UCF could do against that defense.
It'll be in the finals, right?
Hopefully so.
I think they're on each other's schedule. No, I could be wrong, but
do they play each other
next week? Cincinnati goes to UCF.
That will be a good one. Yeah. Come back, guys, next Tuesday, 11 a.m. Pacific. That will likely be one of the matchups we're breaking down. But, Robbie, my question to you was Cincinnati in Tulsa's defense, because you brought up a good point in terms of Tulsa not creating kind of sacks, and obviously Cincinnati can. How much of a drop-off would you compare Cincinnati's defense to Tulsa's defense?
I mean, based on those two games that I mentioned, Drew, I would say it's a significant defense. When you have 101 dropbacks against you and you only get home once, that's terrible. UCF kept them out. East Carolina kept them off Holton Ahlers. SMU, as Ralph mentioned, only allowing 12 sacks in 7 games, excluding Cincinnati. It's a big deal. And SMU offensively is no longer a one-trick pony. They can run the football. So if you play off coverage, 5-6 in the box because you're so afraid of their pass, they just run it down your throat. It's a really well-rounded team. I think Tulsa will have trouble with, but to that point, I think Tulsa will give SMU trouble as well. Just watching that Temple game fortifies the fact that SMU is not a good defense whatsoever.
Okay,
so I'm going to throw out one number to answer your question. Cincinnati is number 1 in the country holding opponents to 163 yards under their average. That's how good Cincinnati is. So you take every team in the country and you look at what they've done. So Austin Peay, they allowed 353. That was Austin Peay's 3rd worst performance. And hell, you could throw that out. That's the season opener against an FCS foe you don't give a shit. Then they held Army to a number 2 low, USF to a number 2 low, SMU, Memphis, and Houston all to a season number 1 low. So against conference foes, number 1 holding conference foes to 178 yards under average. Tulsa is number 20 holding opponents to 65 yards under their average. So, again, but Cincinnati's body of work is much greater than Tulsa's.
And Ralph, just quick question, non-gambling. Do you think Cincinnati has a shot at the playoffs if they run the table?
If they beat UCF, they're in. Yeah. I mean, if it's Cincinnati and BYU, it's not even a question. BYU's strength of schedule will be number 90. Cincinnati's strength of schedule will be in the 30s or 40s. Haven't gone to SMU, haven't gone to USF, haven't gone to Temple, and they finished the season here at Tulsa. So, yeah, Cincinnati beats UCF and wins the ACC. They're in. They're the conference. They're the Group of 5 champion going to the New Year's Day Bowl.
Yeah, but I meant into the playoffs, top 4 teams.
No
chance.
No, I would say in Ohio you're going to have. You would have to have 2 losses. The Group of 5s would have to have 2 loss teams. Everyone would have to have 2 losses. Because if you have a 1-loss Georgia, a 1-loss Alabama, or a 1-loss Florida, they're in.
Yeah.
But Georgia has 2 already, right?
Yeah.
So Florida.
So if Florida beats Alabama and Alabama has 1 loss, both Florida and Alabama are in. I think it's probably Ohio State or nothing. Who knows in this season? I'll shut up because let's see right now. Cincinnati's strength of schedule. Where are they on the rotation? Anyone have a clue? Early, late?
Well, Robbie,
go ahead. You start the next game, Drew, the degenerate special, and I'll look up Cincy's strength of schedule.
Yeah, because if Oklahoma goes 1 loss, Oklahoma's going to be in the Final Four too. If they only get 1 loss, they would be
right now is number 61 on strength of schedule. So that's going to be below every group, every Power 5 team. It'll get stronger though with UCF and Tulsa, but yeah, I think a one loss Power 5 team is going to beat Cincinnati in.
Okay, and Robbie, any quick thoughts on that?
A 6-0 Oregon? How's that going to work in there? Hey, there's a lot of questions to be answered, but I'm with Ralph. I don't think Cincinnati can get their schedule. It's just not good enough, as dominant as they've been, just not good enough a schedule.
Okay, guys. Well, we got the degenerate special, best bets, and guys in the chat box asking about Maction that comes on at 12 noon Pacific. So, guys, we got to book it here with only 7 minutes left until that show starts. So we'll break down all the Maction shows starting at 12 noon Pacific. We got the degenerate special here, guys, 10:30 p.m. Eastern. Cal at Arizona State in the Pac-12. It's not the biggest degenerate special we've ever had. It's not like Hawaii versus San Jose State. Actually, San Jose State, I wouldn't even call that degenerate this year. They're actually pretty good. But either way, we're talking this one of the last games on the card, Cal at Arizona State on ESPN2 here. Ralph, any quick thoughts? Of course, we always want to say going into the degenerate style special here, we got if you're up on the Saturday, don't bet all your winnings, and if you're down, don't try to double up to get back. Just properly bet with something late night action here, Ralph. But if you had to tell them side or total, what are you going?
Drew.
Yeah.
If the play wasn't strong enough to bet Saturday morning, don't bet it Saturday night unless you just want to have fun. If you want to make a fun pizza bet, make it. But again, if you're looking at your Saturday card and it's not strong enough to be one of your top plays that you bet, to me, don't force the bet. But I understand we're talking fun pizza type bets late at night. I'm going to have to throw out the stat. It's the stat to me that doesn't make any sense in this COVID 2020 season. Teams playing their first game. You would think a team with a game under their belt advantage has an edge. Teams playing your first game against a team playing their second game or longer, 65% against the spread. Are they fresher? Do they have multiple weeks to look at a foe? I don't have the answer. I still think it's an advantage to have a game under your belt like Arizona State. Although Arizona State, what's their mindset? Losing 27, having a 27-14 lead with 3 minutes left and losing that game to USC. I mean, shit, you had Cal, Colorado, Utah, UCLA, Arizona. You win that USC game, you could run the table and be an undefeated team. Now with a 6-game schedule, is your season lost? Was it a bubble burst? I don't know. I think that they play well enough for Herm Edwards. I think Herm Edwards is a good enough motivator to get him back. Cal, listen, we know they're a quality team. We know they have 18 returning starters. We know that Justin Wilcox is a defensive guru. He's going to have this team ready. We saw the improvement last year. Last year's matchup saw Arizona State win 27-14, only a total of 610 yards in that game. I think it's another low-scoring game. I like the under.
Like in the under, Cal versus Arizona State degenerate special here. We got Jabril in the chat box saying, leave it on the grass, talking about Herm Edwards here, Rob Veno. I kind of like Cal because of what Ralph was saying in terms of, not playing a game versus a team that's played a game. I think a lot to do has it that the team that hasn't played a game has film on their opponent, whereas it's not the same the other way around. That's, I think, part of the advantage to that 65% ATS stat that Ralph was speaking to. But I don't want to go against Herm Edwards, man. He's already 1-0 ATS, cash it. I thought they kind of should have won outright, but it is what it is. Interested in your thoughts here, Rob,
Yeah, Ralph, real quick while I talk, you just had last year's game up. If you can, just look and see if Chase Garbers was the quarterback for Cal in that game. Guys, he's the starting quarterback returning for Cal, but he was hurt a lot last year. He was definitively the best quarterback that Cal had in a season where they had a lot of quarterback trouble. So with him back returning as quarterback, I think they're in decent shape. He's a dual threat type of guy. They lean on Christopher Brown at running back. The story with Justin Wilcox's team, run the football, play good defense, let Garbers do enough through the air. And he did enough through the air in the instances where he played. So they can be all right offensively. And that's, I emphasize all right. They're not great. They're all right. Justin Wilcox was extremely PO'd that they didn't play their game last week. If they were located anywhere else other than Northern California, they probably would have played. I mean, they had one player, I think, that had contact tracing issues. He was very polite about the way he said it, but you read between the lines, he was ready to go, and they don't want to lose games in the Pac-12. They can't make these things up. They only have 6 of them, and they have no makeup dates. So he was upset. He'll have his team ready to go, as will Herm. Here's my question, guys. Arizona State played well in that game against USC, but I can't even make a comparison between defenses yet. I think Cal's the better defense. USC's got a lot of returning starters, but I think they're softer than Cal. ASU probably has a little more trouble this week moving the football. And for Cal, first game out of the chute, I mentioned it in our Pac-12 preview. I'm just afraid that they won't have this Bill Musgrave West Coast offense, which is so complicated down to a science in their first game. For me, my first look was toward the under here. I'll probably still get there because I think 27-20 is good enough to win. I think I saw the total at 47.5. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that this game will be low scoring, pretty defensive minded on both sides. And hopefully, they just don't pull what's, a general college football game and score a lot of points. I think it'll be low scoring.
All right, Rob, to answer your question.
Yes.
Yes and no. Chase Cobbers started that game. This is the game he got hurt. He was 9 of 12. They led 7-0. He threw a 14-yard touchdown pass to Trevin Clark. Cal was leading 7-0. He got hurt. Devin Monster came in, was 5 of 14 with an 0-1 ratio, and Arizona State wins the game.
That might lead you towards Cal in that game. It really might. At least where I'm concerned, it might lead me towards Cal. I like the under, but I might look at Cal.
All right, guys. Good show so far. We got best bets coming up. A lot of questions in the chat box about the Max show. It's actually starting in 2 minutes, guys. So we got to book it here through the best bets. But Ralph Michaels on Twitter at CalSportsLV, a great follow, guys. Always throwing out great trends and angles. Ralph, what do you got for best bets for us?
I couldn't use Bama first half because they were off last week. I'm going to lay it with Alabama first half against LSU. Totals 28. First halves, they haven't put them up yet. They normally put the first halves up on Tuesday. I'm not seeing them yet, but it's going to be minus 14.5 or minus 15.5. I am fine all the way up to minus 16. Alabama does get revenge on LSU and runs it up in the first half.
Okay, Alabama first half. We'll tweet that out when it comes out from the Sports Memo Twitter. We got Rob Veno on Twitter at Rob Veno Sports. Guys, he's up over 60% in college football and NFL runs. Check him out, WagerTalk.com. Also, check out WagerTalk and SportsMemo.com today. $2 Tuesday. But Robbie Veno, what do you got for best bets for the best damn college football show?
Yeah, real quick, where best bets are concerned for this show, Drew, I think you and I both had Florida last week, so we put one in the win column. 7-2 overall right now. This week, I'll go with that Indiana-Michigan State game over the total of 51 or 51.5. To me, it just seems too low. I explained the reasons earlier, so we're short on time. Just give me Indiana-Michigan State over the 51 or 51.5, whatever it's at.
Okay, Michigan State, Indiana, over 51.5. I will do the Tulsa, minus 2.5. Robbie Veno's made some good points on SMU, but not enough. I think this defense comes to play, and I don't like the profile of SMU's offense versus this caliber of defense. So I like Tulsa, minus the 2 in the hook. I would get on it sooner than later. I think it's heading to 3. But for Ralph Michaels, Rob Veno, I am Drew Martin. Guys, best of luck with your bets. We'll talk for the best damn college football show next Tuesday, 11 a.m. Pacific time. And stay tuned to the Wager Talk YouTube channel because we got Maction coming up with mid-major Matt. So, guys, I would say best of luck with your bets, but we're right back at you in just